The first thing Anna noticed when the elevator doors opened was how quiet the 38th floor was. Too quiet for an interview in Manhattan. She had rehearsed her answers 100 times, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw next. The rain soaked through Anna Monroe's worn coat as she stood under the dripping awning of the Manhattan high-rise, clutching her thin leather folder like it contained the last hope she had left. Her cheap ballet flats squished with every step, the toes damp and cold, and her glasses fogged up every few seconds from the shift between the stormy air outside and the heat of the building's marble lobby. She wiped them with the edge of her scarf, glancing again at the address on the folded paper in her hand. Apartment 38C. The posting had appeared in a job board thread for college dropouts. Personal assistant needed, light duties, flexible hours, high compensation, no company name. Just a Manhattan address and a note that experience was preferred, but not required. Anna hadn't hesitated. After a year of balancing late-night diner shifts and helping raise her little brother, while their mother battled a second round of cancer, Anna had learned that too good to be true didn't always mean not worth trying. Hope, when you had very little of it, was still better than standing still. The doorman barely looked at her as he buzzed her through, his glance landing on her wet shoes and second-hand coat. Before returning to his crossword, she stepped into the elevator, nervous and breathless, watching as the floor numbers lit up one by one. Each ding felt like a countdown to something, though she wasn't sure if it was salvation or another letdown. The doors opened on the 38th floor to silence, expensive silence, thick carpet, gilded sconces, framed modern art on the walls. Anna tiptoed down the hall like she didn't belong there, which, deep down, she feared she didn't. Her reflection in a black lacquered mirror only confirmed it. Frizzy rain-damp hair, cheeks flushed from cold and anxiety, and a folder full of hope that felt flimsier by the minute. She found 38 Celsius and knocked gently. No answer. She tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. Anna hesitated. Then her hand reached for the doorknob. To her surprise, it turned easily. She peeked in and called out softly, "Hello, I'm here for the interview. With Mr. Wexler." No answer. The apartment was stunning. High ceilings, sleek wooden floors, walls of glass that looked out over the city skyline. A grand piano in the corner. A quiet classical melody floated through unseen speakers. The smell of fresh lilies mixed with something faintly citrusy. She stepped in, cautiously, unsure of what else to do. Maybe they were expecting her and had just stepped away. As she walked further in, taking in the artwork and the towering bookshelves, filled with worn hardcovers, Anna tried again. "Hello? It's Anna Monroe. I'm here about the assistant job." The only response was the faint hiss of water coming from down the hall. That's when it happened. The sound of running water stopped, and then before she could decide whether to turn back or knock on an interior door, it opened. She froze. A tall man stepped out of what was clearly a bathroom, steam curling behind him like soft smoke. He wore only a towel slung low round his hips, a white towel he clutched with one hand while running the other through his wet, dark hair. His bare chest was damp, and a drop of water slid down his collarbone before disappearing behind the fold of the towel. Anna's mouth opened slightly, not from anything indecent, but from sheer surprise. He looked equally stunned. His eyes sharp, a sort of stormy gray-green, landed on her, brows raised. They stared at each other for what felt like a full minute before either of them spoke. I'm so sorry," Anna burst out, stumbling backward, nearly tripping on the edge of the carpet. Her folder slipped from her arms, papers fluttering to the floor like startled birds. I thought this was for a job interview." The man's expression shifted from surprise to mild concern. "You came in for a job interview here?" he asked, stepping forward slowly, not in anger, but confusion. Yes, apartment 38C. The listing said Mr. Wexler." He looked around the space, then back at her. "There's no Wexler here. This is my apartment." Anna's heart dropped into her stomach. Her face flushed red-hot despite the cold. "Oh no. I'm so sorry. I must have gotten the wrong floor. Or maybe the doorman." She bent down and scrambled to gather her papers, which had scattered across the shiny hardwood floor. Her resume, references, even a cover letter she had typed in the public library just hours before. And still, the man didn't yell. He didn't call security. He didn't even laugh at her. Instead, he crouched beside her, keeping a respectful distance while picking up a page and glancing at it. "You're Anna Monroe," he read aloud. "Student, or used to be." She froze. He handed her the page gently, as if it were made of glass. "I didn't mean to walk in. I'm not that kind of person," she stammered, standing up and holding the papers to her chest like a shield. "I'm just trying to find work. Any work. I'm sorry. I'll go wait." His voice wasn't commanding, just calm. "Don't rush off. You didn't do anything wrong." The door was unlocked. "If anything, that's my fault." Anna blinked at him, unsure what to say. The man reached for a remote and turned off the music. "I'm Ethan," he said. Ethan Rhodes. The name meant nothing to her until much later. "Look," he continued, "you clearly didn't come here to cause trouble. You look like you've had a rough day." That small kindness, the simplest observation, broke something open in her. A tremble started in her hands, and she fought it back. "I'm sorry. It's been a hard few months." Ethan motioned toward a sleek leather sofa. "Do you want to sit down for a second? Dry off a little. I promise I'll put on a shirt." She hesitated, her fingers tightening on the folder, but something in his voice, a quiet understanding, not pity, made her nod. "Okay, just for a minute." As he disappeared down the hallway, Anna sat, her heart still pounding. She'd expected another door slammed in her face today. Not this, not him. Not kindness wrapped in a towel. She didn't know it yet, but this mistake, this absurd, embarrassing, impossible moment would become the beginning of something that changed not only her path, but his. Forever. Because sometimes the door you're not supposed to walk through is the one that leads exactly where you were meant to go. The sound of footsteps approached again, softer this time, and when Anna looked up, Ethan was no longer wrapped in just a towel. He wore a navy sweater and dark joggers, his damp hair now combed back in a casual sweep. He looked less like a man who belonged in a billionaire's penthouse and more like someone who might have passed her in the grocery store aisle, if not for the sheer calm he carried in his presence. She stood awkwardly as he walked back in with a large gray towel in his hand. "I figured you might want this," he said, holding it out. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice smaller than she meant it to be. She took it and dabbed at her hair and scarf, surprised by how soft the towel felt against her fingers. Even that detail reminded her how far from her own world she truly was. Ethan sat across from her, but not too close. His gaze was steady, but not invasive. It was the way he looked at her that made her more nervous than anything, the way he actually saw her, like she wasn't just another awkward stranger in his living room. That kind of attention was unfamiliar, unsettling, and, strangely, comforting. "So, Anna Monroe," he said after a beat, "tell me how you ended up walking into my apartment for a job interview." A faint, embarrassed laugh escaped her lips. "It's kind of a long story. I've got time." She looked down at the towel in her lap, her fingers tightened on it. "I dropped out of college to take care of my brother after our mom got sick again. I've been doing night shifts at a diner and applying to everything that comes up. I saw a listing for a personal assistant job. High pay, no experience needed. I was desperate. I didn't even check if the listing was legit." Her voice cracked slightly at that last part. Ethan didn't interrupt. He simply listened. "I'm not some girl looking for shortcuts," she added quickly, almost defensively. I needed something, anything." He nodded, slowly. "I believe you." Something about the way he said it made her throat tighten. She swallowed hard and forced herself to sit straighter. "I'll leave now. Thank you for not calling security. You still think I'm going to throw you out?" he asked, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. Anna stared at him, unsure how to respond. Wouldn't most people? Maybe. He leaned back, thoughtful. But most people don't have strangers walk into their lives and drop all their papers across their floors like a hurricane of broken dreams. She gave him a look. Was that supposed to be comforting? He chuckled, a little. For the first time since entering the apartment, Anna smiled. Just slightly. It felt strange, like testing out an old muscle she hadn't used in months. Ethan stood and walked to the kitchen. Do you drink coffee? I live on it. Good. I make a decent one. She hesitated. I should really go. I'm not holding you hostage, Anna, he said, glancing back with a small smile. But it's raining harder now, and your shoes are still leaking. Just to stay a little longer. You came for a job, right? So let's talk. Anna blinked. Talk about what? He set 2 mugs on the counter. Let's start with what you're good at. There was no way she could have known it yet, but this was the first time in months someone had asked her that, without expecting her to defend herself. The first time anyone had seen her beyond the layers of struggle and sacrifice. She sat silently, for a long second before answering. I'm good with people, even the difficult ones. I pick up on things quickly, and I don't give up easily. She looked up, mostly because I've had to be good at surviving. Ethan nodded, pouring coffee. That's actually a lot more than most people bring to the table. She looked down at the floor. Survival doesn't usually fit in the skills section of a resume. It should, he said, handing her a mug. She accepted it, trying not to notice the way her cold fingers tingled around the warmth, or the way his compliment had landed deeper than it should have. The silence between them stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that held room, space. Like a waiting room for the people who didn't realize. They were both slowly stepping into something more important than either of them knew. He finally broke it. I don't usually let people into my apartment. I work from here. I live alone. I like control. So you showing up here by accident, it should have been annoying. But it wasn't. You were honest. And that means something. Anna blinked. So what does that mean? He sipped his coffee and studied her. Not like she was an interview candidate, more like someone who might be exactly what he didn't know he needed. It means, he said slowly, if you're not in a rush to leave, I might have something better than a fake job listing. Her heart thudded. Like what? He walked over to the side table and picked up a sleek black folder, flipping it open. I've been looking for someone to help me with a small project, something private. It's not personal assistant work exactly, more like life reorganization. Sorting things out I've been avoiding. Maybe writing, maybe people stuff, helping me reconnect. You want someone to help you reconnect with people. I've been in my own world for too long, he said, not pretending otherwise. And the truth is, I think I need someone grounded. Someone like you. Anna stared at him, unsure if this was real or a very vivid dream she was about to wake up from. You don't even know me, she whispered. I know enough, Ethan replied. You showed up when you had no reason to keep hoping. You walked into a stranger's apartment and apologized like it was your fault. The universe played a joke on you. You didn't ask for anything, and you're still standing. That tells me everything. She looked down again, her eyes stinging. It had been months since she cried, and she hated how close the tears were. Ethan didn't press. Instead, he said softly, stay for dinner. Let's talk more. If you want to leave after that, no pressure. But if you stay, just maybe we both might walk out of this with something better than what we expected. Anna looked up, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a girl on the edge of falling apart. She felt seen, and somehow that felt like the beginning of something she wasn't sure she deserved, but maybe, just maybe, was finally ready for. The city lights shimmered like gold dust behind the apartment windows, casting a soft glow on the sleek furniture and polished floors. Anna sat at the dining table across from Ethan, a bowl of homemade pasta between them, steam curling upward like a ribbon of comfort she hadn't realized she needed. She hadn't planned to stay this long. In fact, part of her still couldn't believe she was here at all, dry now, warm, sharing stories with a man she'd met only hours ago under painfully awkward circumstances. Yet somehow, with every word exchanged over coffee and now dinner, the air between them had changed. It wasn't just polite conversation anymore. It was something unfolding, and it began, oddly enough, with a question. If I asked you to help me write a letter, Ethan said, twirling his fork slowly, would that be weird? Anna blinked. A letter, like, to someone? He nodded. To my mother. She passed 3 years ago. I never said goodbye properly. I never got the words out. The question landed softly, but deeply. Anna set her fork down, unsure how to respond. Right away, I I've never written anything like that for someone else. I think that's why you're the right person, he said. You don't have a script. You're not polished. You're just real. She swallowed. What makes you think I'd even know what to say? He smiled faintly. Because when you talked about your brother earlier, your voice changed. It wasn't rehearsed, it was raw, honest. That's what I need. Someone who won't dress it up. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was filled with something gentler, a quiet recognition. I can try, she said softly. And just like that, the job offer she never expected became something much more personal than she'd imagined. Over the next few days, their strange arrangement began to take shape. Anne arrived each morning with her notepad and a borrowed laptop. She sat up in the corner of the living room, her work scattered on the glass table near the window where the light was best. Ethan, though still guarded, slowly opened up piece by piece, not with dramatic reveals, but through small stories, unfinished thoughts, and sometimes even silence that needed no filling. She learned that his mother had been a painter, that he had once wanted to be a musician, that somewhere along the way, his world had become so efficient, so controlled, so successful. It had left no room for anything real. She asked questions no one else had dared to, and he, for reasons even he couldn't explain, answered. But it wasn't just Ethan's world that was changing. Anna found herself changing too. One afternoon, she stood by the window, staring down at the blur of taxis and umbrellas below. She hadn't called her brother in 2 days. She hadn't even realized how quiet her own thoughts had become. For the first time in months, there was no constant spinning of panic, no hunger gnawing at the edge of her decisions. She was still, unsure, yes, but not undone. Ethan joined her by the window, a mug in hand. You know, he said quietly, I used to watch the world from this view and feel completely separate from it. Like I built this height so I didn't have to feel anything real. She glanced at him. And now I wonder what I've been missing down there all this time. There was something in the way he said it, soft, uncertain, that made Anna feel an ache she couldn't quite name. Sometimes, she said, the real stuff isn't just down there. It's in the people you let in, even by accident. He looked at her. The silence between them stretched again, but this time it was full of emotion too fragile to name. There was no dramatic music, no sweeping moment, just a people on the edge of rediscovering something that had been lost for a long time. Connection. That evening, Anna stayed a little later than usual. The sky turned indigo, rain tapped gently against the windows, and Ethan brought out a photo album she hadn't seen before. Inside were old pictures, his mother, bright-eyed and laughing beside a young boy with a toy violin, vacations, art, fairs, small-town streets that looked nothing like the world he lived in now. She was the one who believed I could do something different, he said, brushing dust from the corner of the photo. Not just make money, but actually feel proud of the way I lived. Anna didn't respond right away. Her fingers lingered on the edge of the page. Maybe that's what this letter is really about. Not saying goodbye, but finding a way back to who you used to be. His eyes flicked toward her. And for the first time, she didn't look away. That night, after she finally said goodnight and stepped out into the hallway, Anna leaned against the wall and let herself breathe. Not because she was tired, but because, for the first time in a very long time, she felt seen, not as a broken girl scrambling to survive, but as someone who had something to offer, something real. And she couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she hadn't walked into the wrong apartment at all. Maybe she had walked into the beginning of a story that neither of them had expected. The sun streamed through the penthouse windows, casting a golden haze across the sleek wooden floors, but Anna hardly noticed. She sat cross-legged on the couch, one hand resting on a half-empty mug of chamomile tea, the other gripping her pen tightly as she stared at the page in front of her. The letter to Ethan's mother had turned from a simple assignment into something far more delicate, more emotional than she had expected. Every time she tried to write "Dear Mom," her mind went blank, because it wasn't just Ethan's story that was being told anymore. Somehow, her own memories kept creeping in, of sitting beside her mother during chemo sessions, of the quiet strength her mom carried even when the pain was unbearable, and of the day she first realized that not everyone gets to say goodbye. She tore the page out, folded it in half, and set it aside. That was the third draft she couldn't finish. The apartment was quiet. Ethan had stepped out that morning for a meeting, a rare occurrence, given how often he avoided the outside world. But before leaving, he had paused at the door and said, "Write it like you're saying it to someone you loved and lost. Don't worry about getting it right. Just get it out." Those words stayed with her. She reached for her pen again, hesitated, and then slowly began to write. "I didn't know you, but I know the way he talks about you. I know that your laugh used to echo in this apartment, and that you painted flowers in the margins of your notes, just to make even the serious things feel a little more alive. I know you were the last person who made him believe that living meant more than just surviving." As she wrote, something shifted. Her hand moved faster, the words spilling out not just as a letter from Ethan but as a conversation between two hearts that had never met, yet somehow still understood each other. She didn't hear the elevator chime, didn't notice the soft steps across the hallway floor. Not until she looked up and saw Ethan standing there, watching her. He didn't say anything. Not at first. Just walked closer, his coat still on, hair tousled from the wind, a bag of groceries forgotten in his left hand. His eyes dropped to the pages in front of her. "Is that it?" he asked gently. She nodded, suddenly nervous. "It's not perfect. May I?" Anna hesitated, then handed it to him with both hands. As if passing something sacred, he read in silence, and as he did, she watched the tension in his face shift. His expression didn't crumble, it didn't harden either. It softened like something inside him had been held too tightly for too long, and now, finally, it was letting go. When he finished, he set the pages down with care. "You wrote what?" "I couldn't say," he said quietly, "but what I've been feeling for years." The air between them held a reverence she hadn't expected, like they'd uncovered something buried beneath the surface of grief and time. "I didn't mean to make it personal," she murmured. "Some of those words, I think they were also for my mom." Ethan looked at her, and in that moment, there was no pretense, no guardedness, just understanding. "I think your mom would have liked my mom," he said with a small smile. That single sentence broke something open in Anna. She laughed softly, then wiped at her eyes. Embarrassed, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional." "It's okay," he said, stepping closer. "You're allowed to feel things here." No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever made her feel like her feelings belonged anywhere. Before either of them could say more, his phone rang. He silenced it without checking, and then, with a kind of quiet urgency, he said, "There's something I want to show you." He led her down the hallway, past the piano and the guest bedroom she never entered, to a locked door she hadn't noticed before. He unlocked it and stepped aside. Inside was a studio, paint-splattered walls, canvases propped against one another, dust-covered jars of brushes and tubes of oil paint long since hardened. A tall window flooded the room with light, revealing years of untouched creativity. "This was hers," he said, "my mother's space. I haven't been in here since the funeral." Anna stepped in slowly, her hand brushing over a canvas with half-finished brush strokes, bright red tulips, unfinished, yet full of emotion. She used to say painting was her way of holding time still. Ethan whispered behind her, "Even just for a second. Why did you stop coming in here?" He hesitated, because walking in here meant admitting she wasn't coming back. Anna turned toward him, "But maybe coming back in means she never really left." His eyes flicked up to hers. "Maybe." And then, almost as softly to hear, he added, "You're the first person I've let in here." Anna didn't know what to say. All she could do was stand in the silence, in a space filled with someone else's memories, and feel the weight of what it meant to be trusted, to be invited into grief, into healing, into a place that had been locked, not just by key, but by emotion. She stepped closer to a wooden stool, where an unfinished letter sat written in handwriting so different from her own, elegant, messy in its emotion. A part of her wanted to cry, not out of sadness, but because for the first time in years, she felt the presence of something bigger than herself, something holy, even. Ethan moved beside her and reached for a paintbrush, long dried. "I've been thinking," he said, "about starting again, not just painting, but life, differently, from where it actually hurts." She looked at him and whispered, Me too. Outside, the wind shifted. But inside that room, something sacred had just begun. The room had changed. It wasn't just the soft smell of turpentine and aged paint, or the golden sunbeams pouring in through the tall windows. It was something quieter, something unspoken, as if the walls, once still and grieving, had taken a breath the moment Anna stepped in. That studio, frozen in time, had begun to thaw. Ethan hadn't gone near his mother's easel in years. He told Anna once, quietly over tea, that even the idea of touching it felt like betrayal. But now, 2 mornings after they first stepped inside together, he was sitting there, brush in hand, silent as his eyes traced the canvas she helped him clean. Anna watched from a corner of the room, scribbling thoughts in her small notebook, recording not just his progress but hers too. Something was happening between them, something neither had words for, something more honest than any conversation could hold. He dipped the brush into a deep blue, then paused. "You're staring," he said, not looking away from the canvas. "You're painting," she answered, smiling. "You didn't do that 3 days ago." He turned slightly, a quiet smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. "Fair enough." She leaned forward. "What is it supposed to be?" "I'm not sure yet," he said honestly. "But it feels like a beginning." Anna let that sit in the air. She liked beginnings, the kind that didn't come with pressure, just possibility. After all, she was beginning again too. Every morning she stepped into that apartment, she felt a little less like the girl who'd walked in by accident, dripping wet and terrified. She felt steadier, calmer, seen, and she was beginning to realize something else too. There were moments now, short, flickering moments, when Ethan's eyes lingered too long on her face, when his voice softened not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Moments when her laugh made him look at her like she wasn't a guest in his home, but something else entirely, and it scared her. But not in a bad way. It scared her in the way falling does. That afternoon, as they sat across from each other with coffees in hand and a jazz record spinning in the background, Ethan set down his mug and said something she hadn't expected. "I Googled you." Anna choked slightly on her drink. "You what?" He laughed, not in a creepy way. I was curious. There wasn't much. An old art competition listing, a short blog you started when you were 19, and a news article about your high school mural." Her ears flushed. "That was a disaster. The paint ran. The principal hated it." "I thought it was beautiful," he said quietly. "Even the colors that ran." She didn't know what to say to that. He looked down at his hands. "I'm trying to understand how someone like you got lost in a world like this." Anna blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're kind, honest, you see things people miss. But you're working double shifts in diners and answering shady job listings. It doesn't add up." Her voice dropped. "People like me don't always get to choose our paths, Ethan. Sometimes, life makes the map for you." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time someone handed you a pen." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick with something deeper, something heavy but gentle, like a tide neither of them was quite ready to swim into. Later that evening, he invited her to the rooftop. It was the first time she'd seen the city from that height, under open sky. The view was breathtaking, Manhattan stretching endlessly, the buildings lit like constellations. A low wind tousled her hair as she stepped beside him near the railing. "I used to come up here to hide," Ethan said. "Now, I think I come up here to feel small." Anna nodded. "It's weird how being small can make things feel clearer." They stood in silence for a while, side by side, the quiet between them saying more than words could. Then, without looking at her, Ethan said, "You've done more for me in 2 weeks than anyone has in years." "I didn't do anything," she said softly. "You did," he replied. "You reminded me I'm still alive." Her heart tightened in her chest. The wind danced around them, carrying away any lingering fear of saying too much. And then Ethan turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "I don't want you to go," he said. "When this letter is done, when this part of the project is over, I don't want it to end." Anna's breath caught. Her eyes met his, and suddenly everything was louder, her heartbeat, the wind, the world between them. "I don't either," she whispered. There it was. No dramatic declaration, no grand romance, just truth. Simple, quiet, honest. And that night, when she left, the elevator ride felt different. Not like she was returning to her life, but like she was leaving something behind that mattered. As the doors closed, her reflection shimmered back at her stronger, steadier, somehow more whole than before. And though neither of them had said it out loud, the truth hung in the space between them like starlight. They weren't just healing anymore. They were beginning to hope. The knock at the door came at 6:47 a.m. Anna had barely slipped on her cardigan when she opened it, expecting perhaps a neighbor or a delivery. What she wasn't expecting was Ethan standing there with the same expression he'd worn that night on the rooftop, but now it was layered with something more urgent, more certain. "I know it's early," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "but I didn't want another day to go by." She blinked, still barefoot on the hardwood floor of her tiny studio apartment. "Go by without what?" Without answering, he held out something wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine, the kind of package that looked old-fashioned, thoughtful, like a gift from another time. She hesitated, then untied it. Inside were sketches. Her sketches, the ones she'd left behind accidentally in the studio last week. But something was different. Now, they weren't just pages in a folder anymore. They were matted, cleaned, framed. And nestled on top was an envelope with her name on it in bold ink. Anna opened it carefully. Her breath caught. It was a gallery application. Signed, approved, sponsored. By Ethan Hartwell. "You're entering the spring showcase," he said, eyes bright but steady. "You're not asking. You're doing it. Your work deserves to be seen." "I can't," she started. "You can." He cut in gently. "And if you're worried about how, you're not doing it alone. Not anymore." The words hung in the air like stars suspended in stillness. She couldn't speak, couldn't think, because no one had ever done something like this for her, believed in her so fully, so fiercely, that they moved mountains instead of just giving encouragement. Finally, her voice returned. "Why are you doing this?" Ethan's answer was simple, soft, final. "Because you walked into my life thinking it was an accident. But it wasn't. You changed everything. And I'm not letting that go." It wasn't a confession in the way novels wrote them. It wasn't a kiss under fireworks or a string of perfect words. But it was real. And for Anna, that meant everything. 2 weeks later, Anna stood inside the Chelsea Gallery, blinking against the bright lights and the hum of voices around her. Her paintings lined the white walls like windows into the pieces of her soul she never thought anyone would want to see. People were stopping, looking, smiling. Some were even crying. And Ethan? He stood in the back, silent, proud, watching her. She walked up to him slowly. "I didn't think I'd ever feel like this," she said. "Like I actually belonged in the world I dreamed about." "You do," he said, simply. "You always did." The gallery owner came over, beaming, telling Anna that 3 pieces had sold within the first hour. Anna could hardly process it. But the truth was, she didn't need sales or praise to feel successful. She had already won something far greater. Her dignity, her future, and him, later. They walked through the city, coats wrapped tight against the spring breeze, not needing to speak. Everything that mattered had already been said. But on the quiet corner of a street lit by soft lamplight, Ethan turned to her. "I've been thinking," he began, "that day we met, me in a towel, you thinking you were about to teach some wealthy widow's grandkids." Anna laughed. "You mean the most mortifying 10 seconds of my life?" He smiled. "Exactly. I thought it was a mistake. But now I know. It was the best mistake I've ever made." "Me too," she whispered. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Her breath caught again, only this time, not from shock or fear, but from the deep, quiet thrill of knowing. "I don't want to wait until life gets complicated again," he said. "I want to choose this now. Choose you, not someday. Today." Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them, not because of the ring or the promise or even the moment, but because someone finally saw her completely and loved her, not despite her journey, but because of it. She took his hand. "I choose you too." Years later, their daughter would hear the story and ask, wide-eyed, "Wait, so you met Daddy while he was just wearing a towel?" And Anna would laugh, wrapping her arms around her child, and say, "Yes, and it turns out, sometimes the best Things in life begin when everything feels a little upside down. Because love isn't always poetic. Sometimes it arrives wet, breathless, underdressed, and confused. But if it's real, that stays. And it makes all the broken parts of your story shine like stained glass in morning light.